Welcome to another episode about. I'm not going to act like this isn't our second time trying to do this again, Gil. Gil, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Now we got to talk about the JFK assassination, obviously, but how's it been, man? It's been a little while since your first episode.
Been a little bit, but we're moving on.
Are you any, I guess, certain areas that you're stuck on the assassination?
No, not really. I just some stuff that I'm reading and um, just new stuff that I'm trying to learn.
Like what?
Just about like right now, I'm working on the conspiracy to kill Oswald,
Hmm.
and I'm working on that right now. So I'm learning some things about that.
Now, the Warren Commission stated that Jack Ruby had no Dallas police connections, right?
hmm
Someone told me that was a conspiracy, and the Warren Commission never said that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's in the volumes.
I Yeah, I think they said that Jack Ruby had no help getting in the building, and he walked down a ramp. Police officer was supposed to be stationed there was distracted by a car that was leaving, and he just walked down the ramp without anybody saying anything. And that's a bunch of bullshit. That's not true. He went in through. He was let in. He was allowed in. They knew he was in the building, and from the stuff that I've been reading lately, they even knew he carried a gun. The cops were aware that he carried a gun.
So he didn't just bring it for that assassination. He had it on him all the time.
Yeah, he carried the gun most of the time because see what his argument was that he carried a lot of money, so he carried the gun as protection in case he ever somebody tried to rob him. So he had the gun. He had the gun on a Friday night when he was at the midnight press conference, and he was in the hallway before the press conference. He was within 2 or 3 feet of Oswald. He said he was within 2 or 3 feet of Oswald, and he admitted that he had the gun that. Well, later on, he turned around and reneged on that. He said that he didn't have the gun, that he lied. That the only reason why he said that was to help his position in his case. But that doesn't make any sense because if you're saying you don't have the gun on Friday night, how does that help you prove that it's not premeditation? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. I mean, he's originally said that he had the gun. That wouldn't help him to prove that it wasn't premeditation. It should be premeditation if he had the gun. See, and he was in the hallway on Saturday and Saturday afternoon. He was photographed there. He was stalking Oswald.
Yeah, that's what's strange is you see him pop up in all those videos. I mean, there's plenty of footage you can watch on YouTube of just Jack Ruby. That's what I mean, everyone keeps saying like it wasn't, Jack Ruby wasn't stalking Oswald. I think the Warren Commission thing says that, but I just go, I mean, there's photos of him everywhere. And whether you want to say like there's even the really far conspiracies that say Jack Ruby didn't shoot Oswald. And yeah, I've seen that. I don't know if you've ever come across that, but there's a lot of stuff like even the press conference photo. I mean, that kind of it just looks eerie how they got that shot. Like if you want to say like we have photos of him there, it's like yeah, it is strange that there are a lot of photos of him there, whether he's wearing glasses for just to ask questions and look like a reporter, or whether you see him shoot Oswald and then less than a minute later you see him getting walked by wearing his full cell like whatever his inmate attire, and it just like that's so quick. I don't know if there was a chop, or if there was an edit, or if someone stopped the camera and then reloaded it again. But he's
It could have
everywhere
been edited. Yeah, it could have been edited. Could
because
have been edited, but
he's everywhere. I mean,
they let him in the
I
building.
believe Seth Cantor when Seth Cantor says he saw him at Parkland Hospital. I mean, there's I think probably a non-conspiracy viewpoint would be like that he just wanted to be in on everything, but that still would not explain why the Warren Commission stated that he didn't know any Dallas police or had no connection to Dallas police officers. And I've
Or
even
he
heard stories
or
of
he
him
was
ordering
sent there,
drinks.
or he might have been sent there to make sure that Kennedy was dead.
What, at Parkland Hospital?
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to see evidence on that one. I hate to be that guy, but there's so much now where like it's interesting. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think that like obviously he knew about what was going on? I mean, how do we get this famous statement of him saying to go see the fireworks? I remember when I first heard that, first read that, and then I was like, well, did they have fireworks at the parade? No, they didn't have any fireworks at the parade. I mean, there's plenty of people that talked about the gunshots sounded like fireworks, but what did the fireworks mean? Why is that included in there? And who wanted to go pursue what that meant? I mean, that seems premeditated to me in a sense.
Here's a little piece of evidence I ran across in the last couple of weeks, and that was that two witnesses, two women, who worked in one of the buildings in Dealey Plaza. I'd have to look it up on my files. But two women claimed that they saw Jack Ruby in Dealey Plaza during the assassination. They saw Jack Ruby after the assassination hand Lee Harvey Oswald a gun.
Who said that?
Now that's interesting. That's interesting because there were two witnesses.
Were they picked up by the Warren Commission at all?
No, no, they were never called to. They were never called to the Warren Commission. Let me tell you who they were. Evelyn Harris. She said she was, and Mrs. Lopez. And Mrs. Lopez. They were employed by the. Well, Harris was employed by the T.B. Butler Publishing Company, but Lopez was. Let's see. She was told by this woman, Lucy Lopez, the story. Now, Lucy Lopez told her that her and another woman, the girls that worked in this place, they spoke Spanish and they worked in a sewing room across from the Texas School Book Depository building. They said that they reportedly observed Jack Ruby walking up and down the street near the Texas School Book Depository building. And when Oswald came out of the building, they saw Oswald give him a pistol. Now that's commission document, if you want to write this down in case you want to look it up, commission document CD 205, page 451. They saw Ruby walking around, and then so the FBI interviewed Lucy Lopez. The report on her is the following, page 452. Said here's the FBI report says the three Mexican girls, names not given, who work at the sewing room across from the Texas School Book Depository building, had seen a chubby man give a pistol to Lee Harvey Oswald when Oswald left the Texas School Book Depository building. The persons who saw this transfer of the pistol from a chubby man to Oswald were afraid of the Dallas Police Department. So they were afraid to report this to the Dallas police, that they had seen this. This is just stuff that I'm coming across that's real interesting. And a lot of this is in the documents, the commission documents. This was never part of the 26 volumes. This was never a commission exhibit or a testimony or anything like that. These were documents. See, for people to understand this, they have to understand that this was not a criminal investigation. This was not a murder investigation. This was an investigation to collect evidence against one suspect. That was Oswald. Anything else that pointed to other people or other guns or other locations, those things were suppressed. And the things they did find out, they put in commission, what they called commission documents. Those were put on the side, but they were never part of the 26 volumes, and they were never part of the Warren report.
Your background is police investigation. We worked in law enforcement and all that. So you can tell stuff that the DPD did not do properly when it comes to an investigation. And a giant red flag is when people say they're scared to tell the Dallas police. I mean, that's the exact opposite. Besides today's time of everyone mistrusting the cops, in a sense, usually if someone breaks into your home, you're still calling the police. You're not calling a crackhead. Despite whatever that political, I don't know if you've ever seen that political campaign where the guy says, call a crackhead next time, whatever. Next part of this is the investigation. I mean, look at the Dallas police. There were a lot of errors and a lot of things that should have been picked up. Now, you can say bad police work, but there was a lot of things that were not properly taken care of. The best thing is Oswald's last 48 hours when he's being walked out, and that's where Jack Ruby takes his shot. I mean, there was a whole giant gap. The crowd wasn't surveyed before. It was just people standing around, and it looks a little bit like a show.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When you look at it when you have experience in law enforcement or security experience, and you look at this, and you have to shake your head, because those newsmen should never have been in that hallway. They should have been in another location where the police would come out and they give them periodical summaries of what was going on. Never should have been in the police station. And the whole thing, it was like the police chief was the one that was responsible for all of this. Okay, he was the one responsible for allowing the newspaper reporters and those people to get in the building, to have access to the building. And from a security standpoint, the more people that Oswald was exposed to, the more danger he was in. Because the attitude in Dallas, there were people that wanted to kill him. You know what I mean? If anybody could get in the building, they could get a shot at him. And they even had threats that they had received that we're going to kill him when you try to move him. This was stuff that they knew. And it's like they allowed this to happen. You know what I mean? They took no extraordinary security procedures that they could have done. They could have transferred him in the middle of the night without the press there. They could have surrounded him with policemen. There were like 60 policemen in the cellar there in the basement. And here he is, wide open. And the police officer that's behind him, the detective that's behind him, testifies to the commission that he's only there to protect him from escaping. Okay? And he's not there to protect anybody from getting to him. He's not there to protect the prisoner. He's there to prevent the prisoner from escaping. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you need to prevent him from escape? He's handcuffed to Lavelle. Why would you need to, the point is that he was there to make sure that Oswald didn't get away from Ruby. And if Oswald saw Ruby coming at him with the gun, he had no place to go. He had a detective behind him. He was handcuffed to another detective. Another detective had the other arm. Oswald had no place to go, and Fritz was way ahead of him. So he was wide open for Ruby. This was all planned. This wasn't something that Ruby just spurred a moment. He just thought, spur in a moment. So they asked him. They said, well, if this was spur in a moment, they asked Ruby, how come you were carrying a gun? How come you took a gun into the police station? You didn't have any money on you then. He couldn't answer the question.
Well, how did he get into Dallas police with a gun? That's the thing. Didn't the Dallas police check him to make sure that didn't happen?
They let him in because there were witnesses who claimed reporters. There were reporters, and there were, I think there was a guy from the telephone company, if I remember correctly. I'm going to put this all on the education form. But
I don't go on there. I'm sorry. I don't go on the education forum.
there was a guy who was a telephone worker. He was supposed to be putting extra lines into Chief Curry's office. And he was there that morning. And he came down from the 3rd floor into the basement before they brought Oswald out. And his ID was checked. He had to prove who he was. Okay. And then they turned around, and the bag that he had, the tool bag that he carried, they checked that to make sure that he didn't have any weapons. So from the time Oswald was arrested to the time he was shot, the Dallas police were checking IDs of everybody who came in the building. Okay. They were checking IDs of all the reporters, press credentials. And they were checking them on the 1st floor when they came in the building. And then when they went up the elevator to the 3rd floor, they were checking them again. Okay. So these are 2 checkpoints where the Dallas police are checking IDs to make sure that the people that are coming in the building are really press people. There's no freaking way that Jack Ruby could have gotten that building unless the police allowed him in.
Do you think it's possible that they could have let him in, like, because they knew him, but it was they didn't know he was going to shoot him, though? Because there's a weird thing when he shoots Oswald that the reaction is so quick. It's not someone of like, oh, I got to jump on this guy. This is like, holy shit. And then they jump on him quick. So I just think like maybe they allowed Ruby to be in there because go back to before what I was saying. And I'm not trying to say it's not a conspiracy. I do believe conspiracy. I say that. But I'm just trying to see something that doesn't involve a whole lot of leaping and go. Because this is the part where everyone starts going documentation on this. And I'm trying my best to sort through. Like I think Ruby visited Traficante in Cuba. I believe the reporter that stated that as well too, and I think Traficante made a statement as well too about saying someone visited him, but he didn't remember who else was in the jail cell around him, and it turned out to be a reporter that went to the FBI headquarters. But they jumped on him so quick. I go, if they knew that he was going to kill Oswald, they probably would have just thrown him down to the ground. But what you can prove that is really, really an error is the fact that the Warren Commission stated that Ruby didn't know Dallas police. Well, how else did he get in there? I mean, if it was just press around there and you searched everybody's badges, how did you miss Ruby? Did you lie about saying that you checked the press people and checked for badges? Or did you let Ruby in and just to watch? Like, how did he get at that midnight press conference? He's the only one there that's not a reporter or not police. So you let him in to do whatever. I guess they didn't know what was going to happen. But I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, you probably think that he helped orchestrate with Dallas police. And I do. There's a lot of Dallas police stuff that just doesn't make sense. I don't know if it was how the agency was going back then, but they destroyed a death letter or a death threat from Oswald allegedly 3 weeks before. And accounts vary to whether he was going to report it to higher authorities or blow the place up. And that's a big vary. That's a really big issue.
Right. Right. And I think the letter said, if you don't handle this, I'm going to blow the roof off the Dallas police and the FBI. Now, first of all, if he was threatening the FBI or he was pissed off at Hosty for harassing his wife, what the hell's that got to do with the Dallas police? It's got nothing to do with the Dallas police. So I think that, that's a figure of speech. If you don't, I'm going to tell everything I know. I'm going to blow the roof off this place. You know what I mean? Uh, I think that Oswald knew what was going on. I think that there was a conspiracy. I think he knew what was going on. I think I know now who was behind it, the whole thing. Um, and I think it had to do with a certain Texas oil tycoon who was a very rich man and who set this all up. He had he had the judges in his pocket. He had the district attorney in his pocket. He had the police in his pocket, and there's connections between him and Ruby. There's connections between him and Oswald, and this is all. I'm going to put this all out there. Eventually. I'm still working on it, but I think he's the one who, at the very least, I'm not saying Ruby said that he was involved in killing the president, but I think that he was definitely involved in killing Oswald, and the evidence will be there. I'll put it out there and let people think what they want to think.
Can I ask about when you say, like, blow the roof off of the Dallas police? Could that be, like, kind of exposing the corruption that a lot of people, a
Yeah,
lot of researchers I've talked
exactly,
to yeah, a lot of researchers I've talked to have
exactly.
talked about the corruption. There's just a to get a little bit off the Oswald subject, but more onto the Dallas police subject. I mean, what were some red flags to you that you thought about Dallas police? It could be about Ruby, it could be about evidence, it could be I mean, there's a lot of things you could really kind of look at. I'm just curious to what kind of, in your mind, are first red flags.
The way they conducted the police lineups.
Is that the one both lineups, right, where they kinda put cops in one of the lineups, and I don't know
Yeah, they
about the
put
second.
cops in the first two, then they put some prisoners in the third one, and then in the fourth one they used teenagers and a Mexican. And which one of the tippet witnesses said that the shooter was a Mexican? No, these lineups were conducted so that Oswald was the only choice the witness could make. That's it. They were influencing the witnesses by the way they constructed the police lineups. And here's Oswald, all battered and bruised, right, with a torn shirt and yelling and screaming for his rights. And the other three guys are well dressed, and some with blonde hair, some with uh, a lot better dressed than him. It's different heights, different weights, and it's just that's not the way you conduct a lineup. That's the first thing. Second thing is that they continued to question him even after he had asked for a lawyer. Okay, which is a no-no. But see, you have to understand that if he's not going to make it to trial, if they know they got the wrong guy and he's not going to make it to trial, it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter that they don't allow him to have a lawyer. Another trick they did was they didn't allow him to make any phone calls till after 5 p.m. So he couldn't contact the lawyer between the time he was arrested and 5 p.m. They let him use the phone afterwards. Now, what New York lawyer? He wants a New York lawyer. There's an hour's difference between Dallas and the East Coast. So that's 6 o'clock in the East Coast. Now, what New York lawyer is going to be in his office after 6 p.m. on a Friday night? I don't think so. It's not going to happen. Nobody's in their office after 6 p.m. in New York. So, anyways, that's another thing. Then they wouldn't allow his family to talk to him on Friday. They didn't get a chance to see him till Saturday.
That's when they visit him in the jail, right?
Yeah, they went and visited him on Saturday, but they wouldn't let him see him on Friday because they didn't want him to tell the family what was going on and for them to get him a lawyer before 5 o'clock. So they didn't allow the family to see him on Friday night. And then another thing was that I found strange is that they arraigned him without any evidence. They didn't have any evidence for him killing the president, and they arraigned him at 1:35 in the morning. Uh, instead of waiting till Monday and taking him to court, arraigning him there in court, and then just turning him over to the sheriff. Uh, it doesn't make sense. Why would you arraign him at 1:35 a.m. in the morning? This is just another tactic that they use called sleep deprivation, and they keep interrupting his sleep pattern, and hopefully to break him down and to get him to confess. That was the thing they wanted to do. They wanted him to confess, and he never did. They were even yelling at him after he was shot and they took him into the hospital. They were yelling at him, according to one of the doctors. They're yelling at him, "Did you do it? Did you do it?" They were still trying to get a confession out of him, and he He never confessed.
I thought, even the ambulance ride, I forgot what they did to him. They put something in they put a chest tube in him or something. I don't know if that is when he's at the hospital or not, but they said that, like, the situation after his shot that his body just shut down or something like that, so he was, like, unresponsive, is one of the statements that I saw, but, I mean, that's another situation. I mean, that his whole death scenario, I mean, people pick stuff out of stuff, and I mean, that's why it's important to have, like, documents and stuff to back it up as well. So, it gets annoying sometimes because when you're trying to make a point, someone's like, "Show me a document, show me a doc." You're like, "Shit. Okay, I got 50,000 on my computer. Let me load one up." But there's so many varying statements out there. I mean, even with Dallas police and the whole situation, I mean, at this point, you gotta look at it like you're a couple of Texas cops, and you just got probably one of the biggest events in history that just happened. I mean, this is going to be great for you if you can get your name on the front page. I mean, there's a video out there that you can watch from one of the officers after the whole theater arrest, and he talked about Oswald having a shotgun. And we know Oswald didn't have a shotgun in the theater, but they kind of added that in there. And I mean, you could say that was just off the top of his head trying to give an answer, sure, but you can only justify so much where any official police stuff is like, I can't make a statement right now. I can't make a statement right now. And they gave plenty of statements that have been verifiably false.
Yeah, and the chief of police kept saying, "Well, I can't tell you what the evidence is. I can't tell you what the evidence is." Well, because they don't have any. And at that point, they didn't have any. And so but then he turns around and when they find out, the FBI finds out that Oswald, they got the sales agreement for the rifle and stuff. Now he comes out and he tells them about, oh, he filled this application out and sent it in A Hidell, and the chief's telling him everything. It's like, well, what's the story here, chief? Can you talk about the evidence or can't you? I mean, you're hanging the guy before he even goes to trial, before he even gets a lawyer.
Why would they give him so much time to talk in this press conference, though? Like, he said a very good couple of statements. One that's, "I'm just a patsy," and then it was kind of shoved through a doorway. But then there's another one where he's saying, I emphatically deny these charges that are put against me." And he didn't even really know what the charges were. Someone was talking and he stops and looks over. I mean, they gave him a lot of time. I would feel like if you're trying to really convict a guy who's innocent, you wouldn't give him any time to speak.
Well, they ended up the Dallas police ended up telling the reporters in the hallway, "Don't ask him any more questions." And the excuse they gave is because we can't get any information out of him as long as you guys are riling him up. Because you're asking him questions, you're getting him all upset, and then he won't talk to us. So then the reporters are like, okay, well, one reporter says, let's all agree that we're not going to ask him any more questions. And from that point on, they didn't ask him any questions. They brought him out. It was quiet, boom, and they took him to wherever they were taking him. And so eventually the police turned around and did get the press to agree not to ask him any more questions. But yeah, he did have an opportunity a couple of times there. And when he did, one of the things he kept saying was, these police officers have not allowed me to have legal representation. He says, I request somebody to come and give me legal representation. He kept asking for this. And they ended up going, the ACLU ended up going, talking to the police. And the police said, well, he never asked for a lawyer. That was their story. He never asked for a lawyer. Did you ever hear him ask for a lawyer? Nope, never, never. And then, that's what they're going to say. What do you expect them to say? It's like Henry Wade saying he didn't know Jack Ruby. What do you expect them to say? Yeah, we're good friends. Of course, Ruby and Wade were good friends. Wade drank at Ruby's bar. You get a witness. I get a witness on video that says that she saw Ruby. She was the manager. She was the bartender and manager for Jack Ruby. And she said that Wade would drink it for free. This is part of the corruption, Rob, that the Dallas police did. They took gratuity from people, okay? And when you can't do that. It's not illegal, but it's unethical, okay? And this is part of their corruption, that these Dallas cops would go to Ruby's joint and they drink for free. And the best booze he had. He gave them the best booze he had. Now, Jack Ruby, I say it, I use the phrase, he was in bed with the Dallas police. And he was all part of this. And he was all part of this corruption. And this corruption was bought and purchased for by this Dallas oil guy. And he owned everybody. And there's no way, even the mobsters, where the mobster went to his house in the middle of the night and had a talk with him. The next day, Oswald was dead. So there's a lot here that I can't really say right now because I'm not finished with it. But I'm putting the pieces together, and I think I can prove that there was a conspiracy to kill Oswald. And the Dallas cops, they did the same. They did the same thing to Oswald that they did to Kennedy. They led him into an ambush where he had no protection from the front, from the sides, from above, nothing. He had no protection at all, and somebody got him, and that's the way they handled it. And that
I'm learning through all these documents, but didn't somebody tell the Dallas police to stand down? Wasn't there like 126 or something officers that were standing by and they weren't called to go protect the motorcade at all?
I believe that I have heard somewhere where there were guys that were on vacation and had their days off, and they refused to come in. Now, I don't know if that's true or not because the chief of police could have turned around and said, "Look, we need everybody. We're canceling all vacations and we're canceling all days off. And don't call in sick because we'll send the cruiser to your house to get you because we need everybody on board." Okay, because this is the president. They know Dallas is a hot spot. They know the people there are whacked out, and they know that somebody's going to take a shot at this guy. They're going to do something. They knew this ahead of time. So why did the Secret Service take his protection away? Because they were involved in this too. The Dallas Secret Service was involved in this too. All of these people were owned by one guy, okay? And the one guy that owned them also owned Lyndon Johnson. And when you start to look at it all, you say it all begins to make sense now.
You
He's not
gotta tell
afraid.
me, who
He's,
is it?
he's not afraid to kill the president of the United States because his guy is on the on deck circle. You follow me? And he ain't going to put me in jail. I can do whatever he wants. He told one woman who said to him, you know, you're going to get in trouble by putting those wanted for treason posters up. And he said, you know what? I'm the richest man in the world. I can do whatever I want.
Who made the posters?
Yeah. He was the one who put the posters up
I
on the
thought that was
parade route.
I thought that was Walker.
Well, they're all connected. See, Walker made sure that he wasn't in town because he knew in advance Kennedy was going to get killed. So he made sure that he was someplace else far away, and he even made mention of it when he was on the plane. He said to people, "Hey, your witnesses, I'm here. I didn't kill him." You know what I mean? So he knew something was going to happen when the president came to Dallas, and he made sure that he wasn't in town when it did because he would have been one of the first. He would have been one of the first suspects.
I have through all the researchers I've talked to, I've never really talked about the oil aspect of things. Like I've heard I know about one guy that was hunting with like an ex-Nazi or something like that. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. That's the only little bit I've ever heard, but nobody's ever gone down the oil route before. And it's like, I mean, I try and stick with things that I know a little bit about as well too. I mean, I don't mind. I'm not saying I disagree with you or I agree with you. I'm just kind of trying to figure the whole events out. And the over 60 years, you think we'd be closer to finding an answer, but it seems like there's just a lot that just gets shoved in. Like now I'm just trying to verify like there's certain statements from certain people I would consider credible. The reporter, for instance, that saw Traficante and Ruby when they were in Castro's prison, he's been discredited, been called insane, but I consider it credible because he went to the FBI after Ruby killed Oswald and said, that's the guy that was in Havana, visiting Traficante. And then the HSCA found out later that, oh my God, Ruby was in Cuba that day, but he said he was just sightseeing. So that guy there's no way he could have known that. So that's a 1 in a million shot guess right there. So, I mean, that I would consider more credible, but there's also through the community, you'll have people that'll say, well, you can't trust that person's statement. But then if that person's statement fit with their narrative, then they say, okay, you can trust that person's statement. So it's like, well, it's not about what fits you. It's about what fits what close to happen or what we would think happened.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and a lot of the evidence once you can get corroboration for it, you can get a second source or a third source or whatever. It's pretty much you can believe that. It's like the 59 people who said that the limousine slowed down or stopped in Dealey Plaza. You know, these people, what are they all wrong? These people who saw Kennedy hit in the front of the head, these people are all wrong. What are they all suffering from like some mass delusion? Uh, how does that happen? But this is what they say. They're either lying or they're wrong. Or this is their argument for everything. And but they'll believe one person. If Howard Brennan turns around and says he saw Oswald up in that window with a rifle, you know, they believe him. That's not corroborated. No one's ever corroborated that. And he didn't even identify Oswald when he saw him in the lineup. He didn't identify Oswald until after he was dead. But they still use that. Helen Markham is as fruity as a fruitcake, but they believe everything she said about the Tippit murder. She even went to the lineup and didn't identify Oswald. She didn't positively identify Oswald, because a positive identification is when a witness says, "That's the guy." Okay, that's the guy I saw. I'll never forget his face. There's no doubt in my mind. Are you sure? Yeah. Would you testify to it? Absolutely. That's the guy I saw kill the police officer. That's the guy I saw in the window with the rifle. That's the guy I saw fleeing the scene. That's the guy I saw pull the gun on a police officer in the theater. That's the way you have a positive identification from a witness. You don't go in there and tell the witness, well, the guy that killed the cop is in this lineup, and if we can nail him for killing a cop, we can nail him for killing the president too. You don't tell people things like that. The way to properly conduct a police lineup is you say to them, we're going to show you 4 or 5 men, whatever. Okay. If you see the man that you saw commit this crime in that lineup, we want you to point him out to us. Tell us what number he is. And then you bring the guys in and let the witness tell you that the guy is in the lineup. You don't tell the witness that the guy's in the lineup, because now you've already tainted their idea that they got to pick somebody because he's in there. You know what I mean? He may not even be in that lineup. So you can't. This is what I mean when I say, when you start to look at it from a security point of view or from a police point of view, and you look at the way they conducted these things, this is bullshit. That's all it is. They tried to get the witnesses to say that it was Oswald, and they did. And even when she went to testify to the Warren Commission, they asked her, "Had you ever seen any of these men before?" She said, "No." "You never seen these men before?" She said, "No." She never seen any of them. But she picked Oswald, number 2. She says, "Number 2 is the one I picked." You picked a guy that you never seen you admit that you never seen before, because she had to pick somebody. It wasn't the other 3, because they were all police employees.
Well, if you set someone up in a lineup and you have 4 people that do not match the description of the one other person, so you have a bunch of people that look the same, but then you have one guy that's standing out. So that's obviously going to skew somebody's choice already right there. That's unethical as a police thing if you're really trying to get down to the bottom of the crime. But we'd have to look for unethical things before. And that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning about Jack Ruby, the club, getting drinks ordered to the cops and everything of that sort. That could help Jack Ruby have connections to be able to go inside Dallas police and do all those things, because there's favors maybe he can pull, all that type of stuff. You don't have to search me, man. I'm clean. Trust me. Trust me. I bought you drinks last night. Simple stuff like that. Unethical as police. Well, who's the guy with the largest, like, what was the conviction percentage, the rating of his convictions that he had, where it was like way higher than any other normal cop should have in
Oh,
their career?
that was the district attorney. That was Henry Wade. They asked him, how many times have you asked for the death penalty? And he said 48. She said, how many times have you got it? He says 47.
So when you have people that are obviously seem like they're over like James Bond type to do their job, but it's just bad ethics. And you look at Dallas police back then, I mean, gangs, I mean, this is a large thing with wrongfully imprisoning people as well, too. Neutron star activation, I think, has been debunked since they were using it way back then. But there's a lot of things, even the polygraph test. There's a phone call with Hoover and Johnson that you can listen to. And Hoover's telling Johnson that Jack Ruby wants to go to the White House or Washington to give a polygraph examination. And he goes, "Do you trust it?" And then Hoover said, "I don't trust it a damn bit." They said that in 64. So, or 64 or 63. So you say that back then, that wasn't exposed until 2014 by the Innocence Project about using polygraph tests as any evidence to get someone convicted in court. So they knew all that time that it was kind of junk science in a sense. And we didn't learn about that until very recently. So you got to think about the people that would be influenced thinking that this thing's going to pick up a lie that I'm giving, or you got to be the type of people that say, I mean, look, if it's wrong in the first place, if they say, "Oh, he's telling the truth," you're now manipulating the evidence because it doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work, but you're just going to say, "No, we didn't see anything," and then you can get a person that should be convicted off. You can get a person that shouldn't be convicted. So, I mean, there's already a past of corruption with Dallas police. So it's not, I'm just trying to look at like things that you say. I'm trying to find if there's a history for that. And if you look at Dallas police, for instance, did anybody come across that memo, either Katzenbach sent out or Hoover sent out about when Oswald was interrogation and they said, we got our man? Because if somebody from higher up told them this is the guy and it's only this guy, then they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that it's going to be this guy. And you got to think if they're already up to corrupt activities, they're not above doing it again to Oswald or making sure that Oswald takes the blame for it as well, too. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they want the FBI and all the Secret Service and everybody snooping in on their extracurricular activities. I guarantee you some of them were probably getting money off the side to something.
Yeah, and the House Select Committee on Assassinations took a look at the Ruby polygraph test that he did. He ended up taking one, and but he took it in Dallas, and they ended up taking a look at it. And the things that they found, it's in Volume 8 of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. I think it went somewhere around I don't know, page 210 or so. But it's anyways, it's the things that they found out about the polygraph test, that the polygraph machine was not adjusted correctly, that it was not operating right, that it was giving wrong answers. And what's interesting about it is that this is what they said. Let me see if I get what they said. Said it appeared to the panel that Ruby was possibly lying when answering no to the question, "Did you assist Oswald in the assassination?" Now that's to me that's pretty big. It said here there were 4 questions he was asked, and the last 2 were, "Are you a member of the Communist Party?" And the answer is no. And it said, "Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?" He said no. It says here that the House Select Committee panel noted a large rise in blood pressure in response to the question, "Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?" To which Ruby answered no. Now, the first 2 questions that he was asked, see if I can find it here. First 2 questions were, "Did you know Oswald before November 22nd, 1963?" And he answered no. And did you assist Oswald in the assassination? And he answered no. Now, when they asked him that question, "Did you assist Oswald in the assassination?" And he answered no. Said it showed the largest valid GSR, which was trying to find out what that means. But GSR reaction in test number 1. In addition, there is a constant suppression of breathing and a rise in blood pressure at the time of this crucial relevant question. From this test, it appeared to the panel that Ruby was possibly lying when he answered no to the question, "Did you assist Oswald in the assassination?" Now, they said the Warren Commission said that that was the truth, that they determined that he had been telling the truth. But when the House Select Committee looked at it, they said that there was a indication that he was lying, that he did assist Oswald.
The House Select Committee needs to get a better reputation. I swear to you, they exposed some things about the Warren Commission that just weren't obviously wrong, but they don't ever really get talked about in history.
Well, they will again. You have the government investigating itself,
Yeah.
and what are you going to get out of that?
Well, if you got to send me that as well too. I want to look at what you just read as well. But I mean, if we talk about, I mean, the warrant, why would the warrant? That's the thing with me with Jack Ruby though, is like, didn't he call and say that someone was getting him to kill Oswald? Like, why would he do that if he was called in to clear up Oswald?
Well, maybe he didn't want to do it. Maybe he really didn't want to do it. Maybe he was having second thoughts. Or maybe they told him, "You either do it or we'll do you."
But
Because
do you know whose statements that comes from, though? I've heard it before from a couple of researchers, and I think I've seen the document once, but I don't know who was the person on the phone that was receiving phone calls that Jack Ruby, and how
that
did
was
they know?
Billy Graham. Billy Graham was the one who got the phone call, and he claimed that he was told that we are going to kill Oswald, and you better change the arrangements because we're going to kill Oswald. Now he claims Billy Graham did, and he said that the guy that called him by name, so he knew who he was because he called him Billy. Billy Graham claims that he didn't recognize the voice until after Ruby shot Oswald. But anyways, then he realized it was Jack Ruby who had called. Now, I don't know if I believe
Wait,
that,
so
but
he
that's what
recognized him by his voice?
he recognized the voice afterwards. He didn't recognize him as at the time he was talking. But after he shot Oswald, he realized the guy he was talking to was Jack Ruby. I find that hard to believe, but anyways, if he knew him well enough to know him by name, he must have known his voice. But what are you going to say? But anyways, that was Billy Graham, Gramma. His videos on one of my YouTube channels where he's talking about it. And
Did you ever follow Jack Ruby after he killed Oswald? Did you see when he was giving interviews and things of that sort?
I got some of that stuff. I got some of it somewhere. And uh, this is going to be on the thing that I post. But he talks about people in high places who put him in the situation that he was in, and they used him. In other words, they used him. And uh, the reporter asked him, "Are these people in high places?" And he said yes. And eventually, he started writing some letters to a guy named Miller, who was another inmate that was served with him. And these letters to this guy Miller, in one of them, he claims Johnson was behind it. Johnson was behind the whole thing. And but the way he says it, he's not saying it like it's a matter of fact. He's saying it more like that's his opinion. You know what I mean? He's not providing any evidence about it. But he does mention Lamar Hunt, uh, H.L. Hunt's son. He mentions him, calls him a motherfucker, calls him a Nazi. He calls him, oh yeah, he's right. I'm going to put this all up there, and it's going to be you're going to be able to see it. But he writes this letter, and it's amazing some of the stuff that he's saying about it. And they try to make him up to be a crazy. I'm not sure he was crazy. I think that what he realized, he said to Earl Warren that his life was in danger. He begged to go to Washington. What was it about Dallas that he couldn't say? He knew something because he wanted to tell his story, but he couldn't tell his story. He had to go to Washington to do it. He was afraid to tell it in Dallas. Now, when he's being interviewed during this whole thing, when he's talking to Earl Warren, there's a bunch of people in the room with him. I mean, you get the assistant district attorney. Why does he have to be there? He's got 2 or 3 different lawyers. He's got the sheriff, the department sheriff. There's like 10 people in the room. And of course, he's not going to talk if people that are involved or are on a payroll of some rich oil guy is there. You know what I mean? He's not going to
You're
talk in
going
front
into
of them.
you're going too much into the who. From I try and stay out of the who and the why. I realize that's probably been the most controversial
But what I'm
territory.
saying is that these clues that he's given us, he's telling us these people put him in position to take the fall. And he's saying, to Earl Warren, he's saying it's almost like Oswald didn't kill Kennedy, I did, because he killed the truth, and he's not allowed to say it.
Well, he was definitely going to be either attacked by somebody or someone of the public, for instance. There's a lot of people. I think that's the only reason the conspiracy door is really still open from the day. Like it just didn't wrap up with Oswald. If they would have been arrested, we wouldn't have had this long, drawn out conspiracy. You would have one dude maybe screaming in a prison cell that I didn't do it, but nobody believing him because he killed the president or whatever. The public thinks that he killed the president. But then when Jack Ruby shoots him, I think everybody that either saw that or heard about it, immediately red flags go up, where the only reason that conspiracy door was opened was because of that, for the research community to dive in and open it up more, the HSCA to go in and open it up more, the ARRB to open it up and get documents and as much as they possibly could before, ran out. It was because of a strip club owner killing the alleged killer of the president. I'm seeing more articles now talking about alleged assassin Oswald. And I know people have, things that they say behind closed doors. Talk about, I don't know if I believe the official version, but the official thing is like, you got to start making the connections there. And when you start looking at like Dallas police, you start looking at the FBI, you start looking at the CIA, you can start looking at the Secret Service, whether you agree Oswald took a shot or not, somebody did their job improperly. And when I mean improperly, I mean someone should have got something happen to them when it came to losing their job. The Secret Service from drinking the night before, the Dallas police for how corrupt and unethical a lot of their stuff was going on just to make sure a narrative fits. Because if that doesn't get stopped, then they're just going to keep doing it for people with less public view. People that don't kill the president or people that aren't being accused of killing the president. I mean, how many people were locked up or given the chair who wrongfully we're put in that situation because Dallas police said it was you and we got to make sure it's you.
Yeah, well, if you can look up it up online, but uh, after his death, I believe it was after his death, the Innocence Project of Texas took a look at some of Henry Wade, the DA who was prosecuting Oswald. They took a look at some of his cases, and 19 of his cases were overturned on DNA evidence. In other words, he got convictions on 19 people in different crimes that were innocent. He presented the case to a jury where they convicted these people and they were actually innocent, and the DNA evidence overturned their convictions. And some of them had been in jail for 14, 15 years. And so for a crime they didn't commit. So there was a lot of corruption in this Dallas um, criminal justice system, if you will. And so
Do you think that they drugged? Do you think they drugged Ruby?
it's possible.
Did you watch the video of him where he's talking in one of his interviews? I accidentally pulled up when I was doing a JFK panel with William Law and Donald Jeffries and Russell Kent. He was talking about Genesis, and I watched it all. And he was talking about some like a lot of biblical references and just weird things, but his eyes looked glazed, like he was high on something. Now, I had been talking about this long before Tucker Carlson did. I'm sure plenty of other people have talked about it as well too. I got a lot of info on it from Tom O'Neill, and then I found like the X-rays where they like I try and say this. There's the MK Ultra aspect with Ruby. And I know everyone goes, "Oh God." Well, you can't prove what they gave him. You cannot. There's no documentation on what was in the shot that they gave him. But I can tell you out of the 4 out of 5 psychiatrists that he did get visited by, the one who administered him a flu shot for walking pneumonia was Joyon West, who was tied to MK Ultra and ran those Haight Ashbury clinics for dressing up like hippies and drugging random people. Now, I can't, like I said, I can't prove what was in that shot. Jack Ruby said it was cancer. Now, he died of whatever pulmonary enoma or something like that, but then the secondary cause was cancer that they found in like a lung or something like that, but it was a clot in his leg was the primary cause. Now, that is weird, but a year before, they were injecting prisoners with live cancer cells. So there is prior evidence of doing it to prisoners. And here's where the double standard kind of comes in. People go, "Oh, they did it to prisoners. I can believe that." But they don't believe it on the Jack Ruby thing. Where I go, there's no double standard here in corruption. There's, they can do it the same thing to me. They can do it to you. They can do it whatever. So
Absolutely.
if it's done to a prisoner, obviously they can do it to anybody that they fucking want to. They just pick a person, hit them with a blow dart. That's it. Not just kidding. But there's a real like when you look into Jack Ruby now, if we have that, it's an Ohio penitentiary where that comes from. It was an article. Did Jack Ruby see that article? Could be a possibility. Greg brings that up. It's a great example by Greg Parker. He's done great work as well too, and for the research community. And then you look at the X-rays they gave Jack Ruby, and this source does come. I mean, you could take Judith Baker. I asked her where she got it. She said she got it from the archives. I've seen it in a couple other places as well too, but I don't. The document links back to the book that she has, but it's over 200 something X-rays in a matter of 2 weeks. So they were giving them X-rays with 1967 radiology equipment. That'll give you cancer or not. I mean, that'll make you pretty ill. So I say that's suspicious in its own as well too. So there's a bunch of things, but you can't prove that they gave him LSD. You can't prove they gave him cancer. You can't. There's nothing. We have no documentation on that shot. And also, I mean, that's a really you got to look at like I'm trying my best to find the real truth and kind of find like the evidence a little bit of things that are corrupt, and there's plenty of stuff that is corrupt, but also it gets like I just wish all the JFK stuff was public domain. There's so many documentaries that could have been made that go towards the conspiracy angle if the things were public domain. There's people out there that are charging $15 a second for a 5-minute clip. There's so much in there where I go, you're limiting information for people to be able to see. And I feel like all of this kind of wraps under a historical event that it's all of our history right now, which is the Kennedy assassination. But there's a lot of things like people that file Freedom of Information Act requests. I've heard a list of stories that go on about 10 years, 7 years, whatever, just trying to get documents about something, not even national security, but their processing is so long where I just go, all this stuff should have been released a long time ago. And we're still fighting for 4,000 something documents. It's not about having a smoking gun, but you can sure as hell expose a lot of things that were covered up as well, too. Dallas police error, Secret Service error, FBI error, CIA error. There's documents now that show you that.
Yeah, and nobody paid the price for that, right? All of those systems failed, and they even admit that they failed that the president didn't have adequate security, that all of this stuff, but nobody was reprimanded.
Do you really believe that they didn't want to embarrass the Secret Services by firing
That's
them?
bullshit.
I know.
That's
It's like,
bullshit.
what?
That's
They
bullshit.
they had one
Yeah,
job, protect the
yeah,
president.
we're going to worry about what, how, their public image, as individuals. We're worried about that. If you fuck up bad enough on a job, I don't care if you're working at McDonald's, they're going to toss your ass out the door. You're just negligent in protecting somebody, and the guy gets killed. What do you think's going to happen to you? Oh, come on now. Of course, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It was just they're protecting their own. That's all they're doing. And all of this stuff about the CIA, and the CIA was behind it. I believe the CIA was behind it. I believe they had a hand in it. I believe that they're the ones who supplied the gunman. But that's my opinion. But what you were talking about before, there's a lot of that stuff that's out there, and they
The
still don't want
the
to
Jack Ruby stuff or
release.
the public domain stuff?
Well, I the thing is this: when it comes to the public domain, I think that I'm like you. I think all the records should be released to the public. I don't think anything should have been withheld, especially now after they're not protecting sources because all the sources are dead. If they're protecting anything, they're protecting. They usually use the excuse sources and methods. They're protecting the methods. They're not, and that's scary. That's a scary thought because that means they may end up using those methods again. But as far as that goes and stuff being released and stuff, I think it should be released, uh, and they never should have been withheld to begin with.
Well, the reason with the question of the public domain stuff is because, I mean, obviously, I think the main criticism I see out there is people that write a book, people that make a film and stuff. Look, I think like I've never seen the original JFK film. I've never seen it. I don't want to see it until like a little bit down the ways, just so I don't get I don't know. I don't want anybody else's message getting put into my thoughts on anything. But yeah, Jim's film got me interested into it. I respect the hell out of Jim's film. I've recommended it to friends. I just had a coworker recently that watched it. Now, fantasy stuff, I get that, and I think it's okay. But for me, as now I'm getting interested in the assassination, trying to decipher fact from fiction as well too. Things that I've seen through documentation. I mean, there's something in the 22 release about a polio inoculation, about making someone forget everything. That's in the brand new release that just happened. I have no idea what the hell to do with that document. I just oh, okay, I can show it to you. And people are like, what does it mean? I'm like, fuck if I know. Damn's name's redacted. I don't know. I don't even know if this is real or they're fucking with me. I have no clue. But what is important is Oliver Stone's film creating the Assassination Records Review Board. I think that's very important because that would not have probably happened if it wasn't for that film. I think there could be more things productive in that style as well too. But as much as things we see lean one way, and then there's some things that have conspiracy stuff on there, I just think you have to kind of accept both. And there's been a large shaming of the conspiracy aspect of things. That's kind of what pissed me off recently about the most recent release is that like I was into it before all the articles started trending. And I'm sure every year all the articles trend on JFK when it's around the time JFK was assassinated. I bet there's plenty of article pieces, but this one was a little bit different. This one hit to me a little bit different, maybe because I'm interested into it, or I just saw the public interest a little bit more. But there's a lot of people when those documents were released were like, could anybody break down these documents? I'm like, dude, it's 2 days after they were released. And there's like, what, 14,000 or 8,000 something documents that were released or something like that. I'm like, there's no way you're going to be able to go through all of that. Even if it's one page, you're going to take some time. You're going to sort through your stuff. You're going to try and check your information. But there's a lot of documents and things that either someone got exclusively or went to the archives and didn't take a picture to upload it on the internet, but they put it in a book. And then that's a problem as well, too. It's not saying you didn't do good work and you put it in a book, but it is the fact that someone has to now buy your book and then find it through reading your book to get the message. And to me, I'm just like, I think it's more of an interest to the public, whether it's a video, whether it's a book, to have it up there for people to be able to see and at least get a better aspect of history. Because I don't know about you, I like listening to the tapes. I like listening to John F. Kennedy say the F word. I don't think it incriminates him at all. I think what it is just it makes him seem like a human being. We all curse all the time. So we can drop the whole professional, like president never says a curse word and is the, the Hail Mary of God. No, we can drop that and we can have a reasonable discussion as human beings do. Like I get crap for having certain guests on my show that are JFK related. Doesn't mean I agree with him. I don't really agree that the Dallas police was in this giant corrupt thing. I think there's a lot of things that can be explained. But if that's what you believe, tell me about it. Let's talk about it. That's the whole conversational point of people that have done investigative research, people that have, talked to people, interviewed people, went to the archives. To me, the archives, I mean, I have thoughts about the archives. You're like, I think it's just a fucking mess. I know it's good for use and stuff like that, but if it's a government building, the government could just go in there and be like, we're going to take these documents back because we thought they shouldn't be released. And then I mean, come on, like that's not crazy because there's a lot of things in the archives that just seem like they just went missing. And I think that's, I don't know. That's why I told Tom Samoluk when he was on the show, I was like, did you take pictures of any of the stuff before you gave it to the archives? He's like, no. I was like, dude, upload it to the internet, man. The internet's going to be on, someone's going to take that and go on various different sites. And I think I mentioned this to you, stuttered. I'm sorry. I mentioned this to you on your first time on, which was about the website, jfk.hood.edu. I don't think that guy's alive anymore. It says at the bottom of his site that he paid for an extra 8 or 10 years after his death to be able to continue that. You said you knew the guy, but that's important. I think there's a couple years left on that site, but thank God that he did that and thought about who's going to come across this later, because once that site goes down, if you didn't screenshot or grab anything off of it, it's going to be gone. It's much like all these people that spend articles and all their time blogging about other people. When you die, it's not going to matter. I hate to say it like that, but it's going to be up there for however long that domain goes up there, and then it's gone. It's going to be something else. So then you're just wasting time doing that. But I get it. There's obviously a division in the community, but it's the money-making aspect of things, which I can understand from like the lone nut people that get mad about the conspiracy people for making work and then publishing it because they're making money off of it. And also the conspiracy people being mad at the lone nut people doing the same exact thing. If you can all unite on that front that you all care about the assassination, then you should be able to have a conversation about it as well too. Now, I'm not going to say I'm out of that mix as well either. I've probably stuck more with conspiracy people on my show just because they're a little bit, I don't like being talked down to. So that really gets me. And it's not an interview, it's conversation. But I mean, what are your thoughts on the whole money-making aspect of things?
And the conspiracy side, they have a lot more to offer as far as new information and stuff like that. So, yeah, I can understand where you would.
As long as it's not the guy that says it was all an Israel plot. I was like, get out. I can't do that. No, I'll get me banned off YouTube. Get out of here.
Well, some of the theories are quite bizarre, and but as far as the money aspect goes, it kind of pisses me off that people make money off of this. It really does. Because you get a guy like, I'll give me an example, Vince Palomaro. He publishes a book online and offers it for free for anybody who wants to read it. He's the world's expert on the Kennedy Secret Service. He's interviewed like something like 200 agents that were in the Secret Service at
I've
the
had
time.
him on the show. He's a good friend too.
The guy knows his shit. There's no doubt about it. Okay, and
he's a Steelers fan, so.
Yeah, he's a Steelers fan, and you know what? I've always been a Pirates fan, so we get along pretty good. And I've had personal emails with him and stuff, and messages with him. I consider him one of my online friends, but he knows his shit. And he's a guy who published. And when he first did it, the first time he did it with his first book, I was like, what the hell? He's putting a book on there for free. And sure enough, he published the book online for free. But there's a lot of people making a lot of money on this. And that kind of pisses me off in a way, because people have a right to know the truth. And I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist in the reign that I'm not finding conspiracies under every rock. I'm not looking for them. I consider myself more of a truth seeker. I want to know the truth. I believe that we were lied to about this case anyways. Don't ask me about RFK and MLK and all those other cases. I don't know too much about them. But in this case, I know for sure we were lied to. Okay. And this was the very first time where people started to say, maybe this isn't the truth. And they started to lose their faith in their government, what the government was telling them. And the government's been lying ever since. I mean, from Nixon's Watergate to the Reagan's Iran Contra to all kinds of shit. I didn't have sex with that woman, and all of them. I mean, they just keep fucking lying, and they lie about everything. So how can you believe them when they say that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and he doesn't? I mean, it's just one lie after the next,
Well, it's
and it
crazy to
gets to
me
be.
is when it gets unfathomable for people to believe. Like I didn't know about the Johnson stuff until later when Rob kind of mentioned it, and I was like, "What?" And then I looked into it, and it is real. I mentioned it to a guy who studies government ethics. His name's Walter Schaub, and he said that sounds like a conspiracy to me. And I literally in that episode put a disclaimer where I showed the CNN articles, I showed all the statements from the Secret Service people that talked about Lyndon Johnson getting naked in front of them and doing all this type of stuff, dragging people to the bathroom middle of the conversation. I think that's like a lot of part of history that people don't know about. Like people always, when they talk about Kennedy, they bring up like a scandal or something like that. And I'm going to at some point dive into that. To me, I don't care about that right now. I care more about like the death and then kind of what was happening before and then what happened a little bit afterwards as well too. But it's history that's now remembered by my generation, younger generation. Whenever you see Kennedy's face, is the first thing people think Marilyn Monroe, or they think something of that sort. And if it's true, you got to find the truth. But if it's not true, you should probably let the information be known that there's some discrepancies, and this is kind of running down a conspiracy thing. Like, what's the real evidence in that as well too? And right now, all we have is some photos we have of like Frank Sinatra and Kennedy, and then you have a song by Frank Sinatra and Kennedy. What the hell do you want the public to do with that? Nobody that was around in this time period to understand what the hell was going on, whether in Hollywood, the Rat Pack, the mob connection, anything of that sort. So now that's their fault for not letting this all be public domain. It's their fault for buying the Zapruder film and doing whatever they did to it. It's their fault for taking evidence the FBI did out of whatever lockup and then 200 things of evidence and then coming back the next day with more evidence. Like you did a lot of things that were sketchy. And with that, you have the public's trust start to dwindle down. So it's not saying you hate your government, but it's also about recognizing corruption where it stands. And I think at this point now, the people that do all the research, I mean, you can't really blame them for making money. I mean, I wish it was, if we lived in a world that you didn't have to pay bills and shit. But at the same time, John Orr, for instance, he's done great work. He was able to make the magic bullet theory work, but only if it goes through one person. And he still has questions about how the hell do you have bullets that weren't submitted into evidence that were hit to the motorcade vehicle. But all of his work has been free. He's been putting money into this thing and not charging people for it because he wants the information to be out there. That's a rare thing. And whether you agree with them or not, I don't agree with every single person on my show. But at the same time, I mean, if you do the work for it, you can sure as hell talk about it. And I think, doing podcasts like you're doing as well, too, I appreciate it, and talking to me about the case as well, too. But that's the point of it. That's the point of posting an article on a forum, is to engage the discussion, not say you're wrong and then never comment again.
Yeah, and that's what I got to tell you on the first time I was on the show. Sometimes you got to throw shit against the wall and see if it sticks. Because you got to get people involved in this conversation. And I've posted stuff that they said, oh, well, we talked about that way back, and well, let's talk about it some more. There's a whole new generation of people coming along down the line, and they may not know how to go back and look back in the archives of the forum to find out what we talked about back then, 15 years ago. So let's talk about it again for them. Maybe there's some new information that's been released since then that may change some people's minds. So it's always good in the forums to incite conversation and debate. Okay, but some of these people, they're just. I don't have a hell of a lot of respect for people who back the Warren report. Okay, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. As far as I'm concerned, I would, if I were convicted of a crime, I would not want them on my jury, because they would listen to the prosecution's case and then they'd say, okay, he's guilty. That's it. We don't need to hear anything from the defense, because that's what this was. Uh, this was a collection of evidence against Oswald. It was not a criminal investigation. So they hear all the evidence against Oswald. They're convicted in their hearts that Oswald is guilty, and anything that shows the opposite, they reject. I mean, what kind of a juror would do that? It's ridiculous. So from that point of view, I don't think that they're objective at all. I don't think they're reasonable. I don't think they're reasonable people. And I have a hard time debating them because of that fact. Because their minds are already made up, and it doesn't matter what evidence you show them, they're just going to laugh it off, and they're going to call you a kook or something else because you don't. You're showing them that the evidence is wrong.
Well, it's when you want to look at something like this, you want to fact check it. The best thing to do is to find a document. I mean, there's plenty of government documents that I think we all point to, which is going to show conspiracy on some things as well too. But it's also a government document. So when you're asking for an investigation to happen, if the people are in charge of the investigation, I mean, are they going to go down certain avenues that necessarily they don't want to fit? And it sounds crazy, but it's really not that crazy when you look at the way that there's documents out there about Garrison. I have never talked really about Garrison. The only thing I've ever mentioned about him is that there's documents that state Garrison's attempts to embarrass the agency. If you read that properly, does that sound like a government that works for the people, or does that seem like a government that sees you as a problem? So, I mean, that's not getting conspiracy. That's just how the FBI does not talk to the CIA. The CIA does not talk to the FBI. The NSA doesn't talk to either of them. And they all do not really think that anyone's innocent in anything. I mean, there's documents on the NSA that talk about the FBI in a horrible way. The FBI talks about the CIA in a horrible way. So when you get out of the mindset of the government all working under one thing and everyone shakes hands and it's red, white, and blue, you kind of start to boil it down to people and people that are going to try and protect the agency as well, too. If you work for the FBI, you don't want any bad smoke going towards the FBI, which is why there's a lot of cover-ups, a lot of scandals, and a lot of lies. So when you see an agent or a document that states Garrison's attempts to embarrass the agency, well, look at throughout all of history when it comes to those agencies. They've done everything possible to protect their credibility. So there's the danger. And when you look at the Warren Commission, it's a blue ribbon committee. These guys with excellent profiles and resumes, well, they're going to do a good job, right? Because they have such extensive military careers. Well, I think the main guy that I think it was Alan Dulles that did the most number of interviews was like 6% of them all. And the other one's kind of like one or two, maybe, but it was mostly done by the secondary committee, a young team of lawyers. So now you can really question, why do we need this representation of a star-studded cast to do this committee when they don't even show up to do the fucking interviews? So it's not conspiracy to doubt the Warren Commission. It's not a conspiracy to look at the Warren Commission as a shit job, because really, I mean, if you look at it, it was kind of a show. It's much like watching news now. I mean, it's a show. When they get sued, Fox does or CNN does, they say we fall in the same category as WWE entertainment. So, okay, now there's no journalistic integrity as well, too. And then the whole damn thing goes to shambles. And you kind of start just realizing that it's like when someone does a police investigation, I think I told you this example off air first time we tried this, which was, if I show you a video of a house burning and we walk into this house burning and I say, make your investigation of why this house burned down, and you look over and see an electrical socket with black smoke that came out of it, you go, the electrical socket caused the fire. And I go, congratulations. And I shake your hand and, give you a little medal and everything. And then I go, we're going to go back to, the bunker, whatever, the police headquarters. And I'm going to show you something else. And I show you 5 videos before the house burned down, one with a fork and a toaster, one with a candle that's lit, one with the electrical socket, and 2 other things that could cause a fire. Now you're 100% certainty that that electrical socket caused the fire has now turned into 5 different solutions of like, okay, maybe I need to look at this again and make another investigation into it. Warren Commission, HSCA. You get it? Like it's just people doing a job and they're trying the best they can. The 3 bullets fired at Kennedy and Hoover says all of them hit. Okay, James Tagg. Okay, 2 bullets went into the motorcade and 1 missed. You see what I'm saying? Is like that investigation starts to go from 100% foolproof to this is what happens. And oh my God, it's now a person that's trying their best to figure out what happened with the things that they have in front of them. And when new evidence comes out, the issue becomes is that when they stop letting the new evidence come out, when there's a lot of things that be suppressed, and now you have corruption, which is back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound crazy.
There was a lot of stuff they suppressed. There was a lot of stuff they suppressed. There were witnesses that didn't fit their narrative, and they never even called them. And the FBI was responsible for that because the FBI was in control of the witness list. So the FBI decided which witnesses would testify before the Warren Commission and which wouldn't. So it was the FBI, good old J. Edgar Hoover, dress-wearing J. Edgar Hoover, who was the one who decided that Oswald was guilty and that any evidence to the contrary, the Warren Commission would never hear about.
If I was going to say who, I would definitely boil it down to somewhere with that Hoover scenario. I hate to say it like that, but I've learned way too many bad things about that guy to do anything that would be, saying that he was innocent 100%. Because there's a video you can watch of Johnson saying, "I'm going to give Hoover life for his career as the FBI," and I was like, didn't Kennedy try and make Hoover retire as well too? And you can look at
He
Hale
was plan he was
Boggs.
planning to. He would have been eligible for retirement in 1965, and the word was that Kennedy was going to have him retire.
I mean, the weird thing for me is that I didn't know about, which was when Kennedy was doing the debates versus Nixon. I didn't know Allen Dulles helped Kennedy. Like he supported Kennedy, even wrote some of his speeches as well, to some of the things he was saying. I think that's where a lot of the hard Cold Warrior kind of stuff comes from as well, too, is because they realized this. Because I think Allen Dulles knew that Nixon wasn't a pushover. We have plenty of tapes of Nixon talking about Bohemian Grove, saying it's that stupid. Well, he says it's the faggiest thing he's ever seen. And that's from his quote. That's not me saying that word, but it's him stating that. And Bohemian Grove was a conspiracy for the longest time. But we have tapes of Nixon talking about it. He just didn't play. I mean, he tried to create his own FBI after he couldn't get Hoover to help him out with a certain scenario, so he wasn't a pushover. He thought the agencies work for me. I'm the president. And I think we know that that's not how it works. You're in office for 4 years if you don't get reelected again. So you kind of have to go with the whim of the agencies. And that's when Kennedy gets elected and he asked for Allen Dulles to be on his staff, and also J. Edgar Hoover. They're the main guys in charge that have been in charge of their agencies for however long. So you get them on board, you get the whole CIA and FBI on board as well too. Smart, but then firing Dulles is a problem, and then also Hoover as well too, trying to get him to retire. I mean, that's going to only piss off the FBI to not like you at all, because everyone had mad respect for Hoover.
Oh yeah, yeah. Respect and fear, because Hoover had the dirt on everybody. So and because he was living this secret life, uh, anybody who outed him would have been in big trouble, because he knew who was sleeping with who, and which congressmen and senators were going to uh, to South America and picking up little boys and stuff on their trips. And he knew everybody's oh yeah, he knew everybody's uh, dark side, including Kennedy. And when you talk about, you mentioned before about Kennedy and the dark side of Kennedy and some of the stuff he was doing, I think that's important from a standpoint of understanding what the Secret Service thought about the president, and how they felt about their roles in the Kennedy White House. How they were more or less errand boys, and they were only there to protect him from Jackie finding out that he was screwing around behind her back and stuff like that. It really brought down morale. And I think when you start to look at the Secret Service role and why they did what they did and why they didn't respond and why they allowed the president to get killed, I think that's good for a motive. Okay. But otherwise than that, as an American, what the hell do I care what the president does? That's his business.
Yeah.
I mean, to
I
me, it
agree with
doesn't
that
make a difference.
100%. I mean, I probably
That's
listened to,
between him and his wife.
yeah, I listened to probably Don McGovern, his work on the whole Kennedy scandal thing. I think he said it was like a one night stand. I'm supposed trying to try and have him on to talk about it as well too, just because that's an area, like I said, I haven't really touched about. But you gotta like look past. I mean, I agree with you 100%. The American aspect, which is like, why do I care what he's doing in his free time? What do I care if he smokes cigarettes, smokes weed? I don't give a shit. Like people do way worse than that now that we know about. But it's that whole political line as well too. I mean, if you can find a way, and I don't agree 100% with the Camelot thing, the theory of like Camelot was this perfect pristine order that was going to do. I guarantee, I think Kennedy would have made some changes, sure, but I'm also not a diehard Kennedy fan. I just didn't grow up in that time period to know the person. I'd have to meet him to know who he is. I thought he would have brought real change and probably better change, but I don't think the country's ever been the same since Kennedy. And I think that's not because of his death, but because of his ideas. There's a certain question I'll ask you this as well too, which is I think Nixon, if he would have been elected instead of Kennedy, I don't think we would have had the history that we have on Nixon if he was elected earlier. I think he was fit for that time period, and when he came later, we were already in a counterculture revolution. We were already dealing with things from the Vietnam War. We were dealing with so much where I think that just he wasn't going to last in that time. He was fit a little bit earlier. But I think Kennedy, with his ideas and the things that he was saying, I think it kind of ushered in a small change in an aspect, that kind of chain reaction to a lot of things, the way we're thinking about today when it comes to equal rights and a lot of things. And I know Johnson helped support the civil rights thing as well, too. But I mean, do you think Nixon would have got all that dark history if he was elected earlier?
I think may well have been. If Nixon had been elected earlier, we might not be here right now.
Where would we be? China?
We wouldn't be here.
Oh,
I don't
World
think
War
so.
Three.
I think Nixon would have invaded Cuba. And I think that would have been a big, big problem, because that's what they were afraid of. That's what everybody was telling Kennedy. Invade Cuba. We got to invade Cuba. We got to go in. We got to get rid of Castro. Cuban Missile Crisis. If Nixon was there with the Cuban Missile Crisis, they would have invaded, and it would have been a nuclear war. And I'm not sure we would have been here.
Do you believe the 600 and something attempts on Castro's life, or do you think it was probably like 50?
638.
Do you think it was that, though? I thought it was 683. That's what the book said.
638 attempts against Castro. They couldn't kill him.
Do you believe that, though? I either believe the theory that Traficante was a double agent.
You know why? You want to know why I believe that? Because Castro had totally infiltrated the Cuban exile community in Miami. He had his agents all over the place. And he knew when they were coming. He knew how they were going to kill him. He knew the whole thing. That's why they couldn't get him, because he knew in advance that they were coming. He knew when they were going to invade the Bay of Pigs. He knew that in advance. He knew that 2 days ahead of time. The Russians had told him. He knew every time the United States moved against Castro, Castro knew it in advance. That's why they were never successful against him. They should have just left the guy alone, for crying out loud.
Besides having the number, I haven't been able to see every single way that they've done. I know there's a book about it by Fabian Escalante, and I don't know if he's being accurate in it or not. I wanted to try and find his email to invite him on to talk about it. But I have seen, I think I have a total of 20 that I have seen, like poison cigars, explosive cigars, shellfish toxin, botulinum stuff labeled in his cigars as well to make poison cigars. I've seen the wetsuit thing where they were going to put something in his wetsuit when he went diving, an exploding seashell. I've seen this documents on that, and I've seen the 13 listed names on it as well too. And one of those is an MK Ultra guy named Sidney Gottlieb, probably the most famous in MK Ultra. Poison powder in his beard to make his beard fall out. But
his beard will fall out.
It's a character assassination. That's smart as hell. It's not a mob strategy. I can tell you that. There's no fucking guy with a mob IQ that's doing that.
Make his beard fall off and everybody will hate him.
I mean, it's all the power.
You're talking about Gottlieb. You know that he had at the time, that one of the things they were talking about getting Castro, he had a chemical which he could inject into you, and it would cause a heart attack. It would cause you to die of a heart attack.
That's the heart attack gun in the church community.
And leave no trace of itself in your bloodstream after.
It's that botulinum toxin. It's black tar. And if you really want to chase that down, if you believe that we were in Vietnam there's plenty of reasons why we're in Vietnam. I guess they keep saying there's many reasons for war, even though the public doesn't agree with any of them. But one of them is the heroin theory, that two of the longest wars we've ever fought were biggest heroin circles ever, heroin triangles, which is Vietnam and Afghanistan. Now, if you believe that theory, if you look up what that botulinum toxin is, it's black tar. It's black tar heroin. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know, but Sidney Gottlieb is like, I mean, his whole idea for making poison bullets, I think they called them flechettes, is what they called them in the church. If you watch it, anybody out there listening, I've showed it on air before, but it's a YouTube video of the heart attack gun, where they said it shoots a dart from about 100 meters, and it can, within 24 hours, someone will go into cardiac arrest. I mean, that's your agencies. I mean, if they have ideas like that and they create things like that, you can only imagine what has happened over the past 30-something years, because nobody in the church committee really suffered a price. The CIA got a little bit embarrassed, but even they had two directors that were right beside William Colby in the trial of all that stuff, and they were saying we don't want him to expose too much. You know, he wants to be honest, but we can't let him be too honest, because we have people that are overseas and intelligence operations, and you're going to put them at risk. I agree with that. Do not put them at risk. But at the same time, you get into the part about publishing the budget for the CIA, and they go, you don't have to do that. Why the hell not? If it's coming from American taxpayers, shouldn't that be published, and we should be well known on what you're exactly doing, because we found out you're on college campuses influencing people as well too. And you're also doing a lot of things like a heart attack gun and plenty of other stuff with COINTELPRO that the FBI was up to as well too. There was a lot of stuff, not just the CIA doing bad things. And I think that should be, this whole area of national security. Like, define your terms, please. That's all. Just tell me what do you can't leave it an open door policy like, oh, an interview with Oswald, for instance, at a mental institution, the Clinton incident. Found that through John Newman's work. I was sent those documents, but that's not in the archives. It's not even in the ARRB David Montague's notes, and he's the one that specifically requested for that. That's not on the Mary Farrell site. Is that locked up still? The full info? I don't know. Why is it an interview at an institution? National security. That just kind of blows that whole 4,000 documents of intelligence operations stuff out of the water if they have an interview there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that still, people say, yeah, he was here, he was there. Who knows? Because the documents say that he was, but why isn't it all part of the official version, the whole story? And let the researchers sift through it and find out what the truth is. The Garrison found out about that Clinton hospital, and his theory was that they were trying to get Oswald into the hospital so that they can use him, just make some paper changes and stuff, get him to work there, but get some paper changes and make him into an inmate, and that would have added more to his cover story, that he was a mental case.
What about the one guy who said there was a conspiracy and he was checked into a mental institution? His whole life was basically ruined.
There were a couple of military people who claimed that they were decoders, and they claimed that they got coded messages planning the advanced knowledge of the assassination of the president. They stuck them in a nut house, and I'm saying to myself, well, and this is what they argue. I say, okay, he said that that the president was going to be killed in Texas. One said around November 28th. The other one said the president would be killed in Dallas. That these were all coded messages. This is stuff that they got, and he went. Well, one guy, I think it was Eugene Dinkin was his name. He went AWOL, and in France, and he told him, I forget where he ended up. I don't forget if it was in Denmark or where it was. Wherever he ended up, he told them that the president was going to be killed and all this other stuff, and so the newspapers got a hold of it, and he tried to send. One of them, I don't forget if it was him or the other guy, tried to send a letter to Robert Kennedy warning him that the president would be killed if he went to Texas. And so they turned around, they put him in a nut house. And the House Select Committee on Assassinations was supposed to question him, but they never questioned him. They questioned the sergeant instead as to what kind of a guy he was and all this stuff. Why the hell didn't they just question the guy? Maybe he was dead. I don't know. I really didn't get that far into it. But of course, the Warren Commission supporters say, well, these guys were all ended up in a mental institution, so they had to be crazy, right? Well, then my question is, well, tell me what kind of mental illness that allows anybody to allow its sufferer any kind of ability to tell the future. What kind of mental illness allows somebody to tell what's going to happen in advance? It doesn't make sense. So I think that they did find out about this, that this assassination was being spoken about in code through the military. I believe the military was involved. I believe the Secret Service was involved. I believe the FBI was involved. I believe that the Dallas police were involved. I believe they were all involved in this. This was a local Dallas, and all of these had, offices in the Dallas area. They were all controlled by this one guy who spent a lot of money, and I believe that they all knew that this was coming in advance. And then you have the teletype that they say never existed. The FBI said never existed, and that's interesting. And that warned that a violent revolutionary group was planning to kill the president in Dallas on his trip there, November 22nd, 23rd. And it advised all the. This came out on the 17th. Now, it came out on the 17th, a day after Oswald had met with James Hosty. Hosty, according to the Dallas Morning News, they had an article that said that Oswald had met with Hosty on the 16th of November. The following day, this teletype supposedly was caught in New Orleans by a clerk, an all-night clerk that was there named William Walter, and he claims that's what the teletype said, and it requested all agents to contact PCIs, and PCI means potential criminal informant, and CIs, criminal informants, and anybody to see if there was any truth to this. Well, this was all, the FBI has no record of it. After the assassination, the FBI has no record of it. Nobody knows anything about it. So they kind of make this Walter guy up to see, like he's crazy. He's another one of those nuts. But they knew this was going to happen in advance. That's the point I'm trying to make. They knew this was going to happen in advance. I believe the letter that Oswald sent on November 8th to Dear Mr. Hunt. I don't know if you've seen that letter or not. It says, Dear Mr. Hunt, let me see if I can call it up
Is
here.
that I think Jerry Croft said that when I had him on.
Yeah, there was an Oswald letter to Mr. Hunt. Let's see if
Because Jerry Croft believes it was James Files that did it.
Yeah, see,
There's
I
like
got a
30
problem.
people that said they killed Kennedy. I mean, for God's sakes, I got to ask Woody Harrelson about his dad.
I got a problem with these people who come forward and say, I did it. I mean,
It's like the Zodiac Killer. When the Zodiac Killer happened, there was a bunch of people that went forward and said, "Oh yeah, I'm the Zodiac Killer." Like, how'd you kill your victims? Oh, I beat them to death with a hammer. Well, Zodiac Killer never killed anybody with a hammer. It was just people that wanted the fame for it. Which is like Oswald. He never wanted the fame for. He never said it. He never ever stated he killed the president. He never left anything at the fucking window. Like, here's my wallet. Here's my. That's what they should have did, is dropped his wallet at the damn book depository building or something. I mean, he could have just been like, of course. I mean, he says when someone asks him, why'd you kill the president? Why were you at the building? He's like, well, naturally, if I work there, like I worked
were you in
there.
the building?
Yeah.
Were you in the building? And then meanwhile, there's another guy that keeps asking him, did you kill the president? And he says, no, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't shoot anybody. The reason why they arrested me is because I lived in a civil. Did you kill the president? And then it's like, and then he goes, did you kill the president? Again, guy, he answered your question 3 fucking questions ago. Why do you keep asking him the same question?
I mean, they
This
did
is the
that in
letter.
the old.
I'm going to read you the letter.
Yeah.
Dear Mr. Hunt, I would like information concerning my position. I am asking only for information. I am requesting that we discuss the matter fully before any steps are taken by me or anyone else. Now, that's an interesting letter. This was written on November 8th, 1963. Thank you, Lee Harvey Oswald. So, who is Mr. Hunt? Well, everybody for years thought it was E. Howard Hunt that he was writing it. But that's not who it was. It was the other Hunt. It was the oil man. And so, and the reason why I know that is because his security guy said that they found this letter on H.L. Hunt's computer. So he wasn't talking to E. Howard Hunt. He was talking to the other Hunt.
I know you can't talk a whole lot about it because you're going to publish an article about it, but damn.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there's a lot of connections here. Okay, there's connections. There's connections with Joe Civillo, the mafia boss in Dallas, who was a friend of Jack Ruby. Civillo was called to Hunt's house after they found out about Oswald's security. And what did Hunt talk to Civillo about? Well, they wanted him taken out, and he wanted Oswald taken out. And Civillo got a hold of Jack Ruby and had him do it. And that's why Ruby was saying, the people that have put me in this situation, they'll never let the truth come above board, because he knew that H.L. Hunt owned Lyndon Johnson. He owned J. Edgar Hoover. He owned all of these people. That the truth is never going to come out. You got to, and he's telling Earl Warren, my life is in danger here. I want to tell you my story, but I can't tell it to you here. Why? Because those people. That's what I believe. But anyways, we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out, because Ruby knew Wade. There's no doubt in my mind that Ruby knew Wade. Wade was a liar. Wade said, "Oh, I never met Jack Ruby." First time I saw him was when he answered the question the other night or he corrected me. That's what it was. He corrected me when I said something. He said fair free Cuba committee, and Ruby said no, fair play for Cuba committee. Henry. He kept calling him by his name, Henry. So he knew who he was, and even the witness says that Wade used to drink in Ruby's bar, and with other Dallas police officers. We were talking about the corruption before, so all of this stuff it was all connected, and Ruby was running guns too. There were guns that
Thank
were
you.
being stolen out of Fort Hood. There were guns being stolen out of Fort Hood, Texas, and the ATF got involved in that. An agent named Frank Ellsworth got involved in that, and uh, two of the people he was going to bust these guys. Big time. They were stealing these guns for what they called the second invasion of Cuba. This is it. This is all interesting because the guy who was involved in this gun, one of the guys who was involved in this gun running from, was a reserve that worked at Fort Hood, was also a student at North Texas State University. Okay, North Texas State University was the alibi for the guy who had brought two rifles into the Texas School Book Depository 2 days before the assassination, a guy named Warren Castor. See, he claimed that he was at North Texas State University having lunch with Vernon Payne, who was the head of the business school there. That was his alibi for not being in Dallas that day. And he brought the rifles in. He had bought one rifle for his son for Christmas. Another one was get this, a 30-06 that had been converted. And a 30-06, he called it a 30-06 Mauser. And one of the Mausers that were converted to 30-06s in those days was the Argentine 7.65 Mauser. Now we get into a whole thing with Roger Craig seeing a 7.65 Mauser. So Seymour Weitzman saying it was a 7.65 Mauser. Eugene Boone describing it as the rifle found in the school book depository as a 7.65 Mauser. And all of this stuff gets connected. And you say to yourself, wow, when you're reading this, you're reading these testimonies and these documents, and you're saying, wow, these guys, maybe there really was a second rifle found in that building. Very interesting stuff. And
Yeah.
now here's another thing. This guy Castor that brought the two rifles into the building, his office, he was the regional manager for Southwest Publishing Company. Okay. Southwest Publishing Company was on the second floor of the Texas School Book Depository. It had windows on Elm Street and it had windows facing the grassy knoll. It was a corner office. So it had windows both ways. Now, Southwest Publishing Company, this is interesting because before the assassination, this woman named Elizabeth Cole had gone to a seminar in New Jersey, and she heard these two Cuban students talking in Spanish, talking about an assassination of Kennedy in Dallas when he went to Dallas, that they were going to try to assassinate him. And she understood what they were talking about was that the assassination would happen from a building where there was a publishing company. See, now all of this is starting to get tied together. Now you're saying, well, of course, she claims that she reported this to the New York office of the FBI. This was before the assassination. Well, so they send a letter to the teletype, the Hoover sends a teletype to New York and to New Jersey to find out, if there's any record of her reporting it. Of course, they have no record of her reporting it, even though her mother backs her up that she did. And she even tells the name of the person that she talked to in the office. But all of this stuff starts to make sense now because the Cubans can't keep their mouth shut. They got diarrhea in the mouth. You could never keep a secret in the Cuban community. That's why Castro knew every time they were coming, because they all talked about it. Once they found out something, that was it. The old mafia saying, no, three people can keep a secret if two of them are dead. That's the way it was down there. As soon as they got something, that was it. It got out all over the place. And even I think it was, I don't know if it was the New York Times or one of the newspapers the day before the Bay of Pigs were reporting that the U.S. was going to invade Cuba, or that at least the anti-Castro Cubans were going to invade Cuba. And Kennedy's like, what, the Russians, all they have to do is read the New York Times. They don't have to even have spies in this country. All they got to do is read the American newspapers. They tell you everything.
Before we get all over the board on this one, we went all over the board throughout the conversation, but that's kind of how my show goes, Gil. And we could talk for hours upon this. I'll have you back on for sure to talk more about this. I would like to get you on a panel at some point if I schedule another one down the road. But real quick, can everyone find your links? You've done great work. You've written plenty of articles on the John Duncan's site. I think I'm saying his name properly. I've seen him plenty of stuff you wrote and on the education forums as well too. Is there a place where people can find your website and any other links you'd like to promote as well too?
Well, yeah, there's that, I can't give you their address because I don't know what it is. It's JFK Assassination Board, JFK Assassination Forum, the Education Forum. I'm on there. My YouTube channel is, I think it's Gil Jesus 8298. I think it is. If you do that, take a look at that channel. I got some new videos on that. Or JFK 63 Conspiracy. That's on YouTube. My website is gil-jesus, JESUS.com. And that's basically my case, my defense case, defense of Oswald and his innocence. And so if anybody wants to tell, they can email me if they want to at gjjmail120253 at AOL.com. I use that email for my JFK stuff. And sometimes you can catch me on the Usenet news group alternative alt.conspiracy.jfk. And I'll tell you, I let it all hang out over there. I don't, I drop the F bombs and everything. So, if you're, you're going to show something to your kids, not something you want to see. Cause I go at these lone nutters and I let them have it full balls to the wall. I don't hold back on these people. I show them how stupid they are. And that's why I'm so loved.
Well, that's why they call cursing a term of endearment.
Lot of people don't like me because I have a low tolerance for stupidity, and I'm trying to get to the truth, and I'm not going to let these idiots stop me from getting to it. And hopefully one day we will know the truth. And if I can add anything to that end, that's what I'm trying to do. Just try to get to the truth.
Well, I appreciate the time, Gil, and I appreciate all the work you've
And
done.
thanks, and I appreciate guys like you who are willing to stick their necks out and talk about stuff like this, because a lot of people don't want to hear what you have to say nowadays. A lot of people want you to just keep your mouth shut and just go along with the rest, and that's not what a democracy is all about.
I'm not scared of the government getting me, but goddamn, if I ain't scared about the CCP, holy shit, that's one where I'm like, all right, maybe I'll tread lightly in that territory. But
And they're everywhere. They're everywhere nowadays.
I'm gonna link your links in the description. It's been a pleasure chatting, and thanks for listening to this episode about the Blank Podcast.